June. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Paleontologizing. Holy cow. It is good to see everybody here. I know it is much earlier than we normally stream, and also we don't normally stream on Saturdays, so this is pretty different and pretty cool. I've been excited about this. And our commands aren't working. I know Nightbot was having some issues this morning, too. So many different things weren't working. But anyway, we'll get that sorted out. The point is, well, welcome to Paleontologizing. We're doing a special fundraising stream today, a charity stream for QueerCare, which is a really cool organization. I'll talk about that in a minute, but there's a couple more things I've got to sort out. Nothing technically was working this morning. I've had to restart my computer 3 different times. It's wanted to update 3 different times. I don't know what's going on with Microsoft, but hang on just a second. So anyway, despite the technical difficulties, I have a good stream today. It's going to be a short one, just 2 hours here, and
question of all surrounding the dinosaurs is why.
Well. This is the reason for our stream today.
And their 48 raiders have arrived to ask exactly that question.
Thank you, Dina Ingalls, for the raid. Welcome. Handstand on a curve. Hello.
Today
We're part of a raid train today.
Bingo. One of the items flying was a dinosaur, so I captured a picture of a duck.
Very nice, Trek
When
Nerd.
it was voting time, I had to educate all of the players that birds are dinosaurs and directed them here.
That's super cool, Trek Nerd. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for the 56 months of support. Holy cow. Is that extraordinary? I appreciate that. Welcome, Raiders, from Dina Ingalls. It's great to have you here. Thank you for helping continue this raid train. Dina, I hope you had an excellent stream. We're going to have, I think, a bit of a change of pace here. This might be a little bit different. We're not going to be doing any games today. My name is Danny Anduza. I'm a dinosaur paleontologist. Hopefully you know already that a paleontologist is a scientist who studies fossils. I work on dinosaur fossils in particular, but I've got to know a little bit about natural history in general. On today's stream, we're going to be talking about interesting places in nature where clearly biological sex is not a binary. There's a wonderful quote from an evolutionary biologist by the name of J.B.S. Haldane. And I think it, in almost a cheeky way, it applies to our topic for today. He once wrote, "The universe is not only queerer than we suppose, but queerer than we can suppose." In this sense, queer is meant to be, the meaning that he's implying there is strange, complex, interesting, unexpected. But it also applies to, I guess, queer in the QueerCare sense. So we're going to be talking about all kinds of different critters today that defy expectations. They don't fit into these neat, tidy little kind of wrapped up in packaged gender boxes that we as humans often stray toward. Nature is far more complex and fascinating and interesting than that. Whether we're talking about California sheephead fish, or California condors, whether we're talking about Komodo dragons, or gharials, or birds, or sea turtles. Each one of these has interesting things to say about how kind of these human constructed binaries that we often kind of nail ourselves down to. Nature doesn't care about that stuff. As somebody who studies natural history, as a paleontologist, you know, I've known about these examples for years and years, but I think a lot of folks in the general public might not be aware of this kind of thing. So we're going to be exploring these different examples today, and raising money for QueerCare as well. More peculiar, says Rachidactylus. Exactly. Yeah. Trek Nerd says, I preach this all the time. Yeah. And Ken is here too. Ken, how are you doing? Welcome. Zombie Giant Sponge, Trek Nerd, Rachidactylus, Helena Handbasket, Lordy, Zopdash, Gravity, Dina Ingalls. It's so good to have you all here. Cynthia says meow. Meow to you too, Cynthia. Hello. It's gonna be good. the organization that we're raising funds for is one that that Lordy and Ios have been supporting for a while, called QueerCare. It's kind of more important now than it's ever been to support organizations like this because of the political climate here in the United States. And I don't know, I probably don't have to tell you about this right now, especially if you're coming in with the raid train, but queer folks are under threat from the federal government, from a lot of different forces in play right now. What QueerCare does is they're an all-volunteer organization that helps queer folks when they're traveling to places like San Francisco and New York, needing gender-affirming care. They kind of fill in some of those care gaps. So say somebody is flying into San Francisco or New York, and they don't really have anybody there. There's nobody looking after them. They don't have much of a base of support. If you're all alone in a strange city, that could be tricky, especially if you're a member of a vulnerable group. What QueerCare does is they train volunteers to help folks out like that, taking them to appointments, medical checkups, emotional support, groceries, pet care, whatever, you know? Each case is going to be different, and this is a small organization, all volunteers, and they help folks out in need. And again, at a time when there's a lot of hostility toward queer folks. I'm really proud to be able to help out with this today, and we're gonna sort out the oh, we gotta, here we go. Let's start our fundraiser right now, shall we? Here we go. Start fundraiser. So that should be appearing on our page right now. Refresh if it hasn't yet. But yeah, good stuff. But yeah. Let me know if it's worked or not. And here we go. Anything? Let me know, chat. Counting on you. Yep, is E the bar? We see the bar? Nice, Claire. Okay. Cool. Beautiful. Before we get into any of this today, I want to make it very clear that this is a little bit outside of my particular realm of expertise. I'm trained as a dinosaur paleontologist. I dig up dinosaur fossils, I study them, I publish on them. The idea of biological sex is a really, really complex subject, and this is not my field of expertise. I'm kind of adjacent to this in some ways, as somebody who studies evolutionary biology, who studies the history of life on Earth. I'm aware of all of the examples that we're talking about today, but this is not actually like what I study. And if we extend that to humans, it becomes even more complicated. We're extraordinarily complex creatures as human beings. And so I might not get all of the terminology exactly right. I might goof things here or there. I'm a non-specialist in this field. So if any of you watching do happen to be more knowledgeable about this than I am, be patient with me. We're here trying to raise money for QueerCare. I'm here to show you all of these cool creatures that kind of explode this narrow view of sex being a binary thing in nature.
Do you think dinosaurs are put together correctly?
Cynthia, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that.
You're smart. What do you think?
Do a research on that, Oliver.
I never.
Appreciate the follow, Cynthia. Regadactylus says it's okay. We can use this as an example of autodidactic learning by people who are an expert in something, wanting to learn about something cool in another thing. Appreciate that, Reiko. Regadactylus also recommended an excellent book to me, which I only got yesterday, started reading last night. But if this subject today is something that you're interested in, and you'd like to read a work by somebody who actually is a specialist in this field, I would highly recommend this book. It's called Sex is a Spectrum, The Biological Limits of the Binary by Agustin Fuentes. Excellent stuff. A lot of the examples that we're going to be talking about today on stream are actually outlined in this book, and then it kind of takes that and looks at humanity as well. But I'm not an anthropologist. I don't study people. We're going to be focusing on non-human animals today. Yeah. It's Mastodon, not Megalodon. There you go, Neural X. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Anywho. And holy cow, we're getting the donations rolling in already. Holy cow, Trek Nerd, $50. Fiona the T-Rex, $15. Dr. Irrefutable, $25. Extraordinary. That puts us at what? That's $90 already out of our $500 goal. Phenomenal. And why is this 9,000 out of 50,000 followers? I'm not sure why it's saying this right now. We've just been having glitches left and right. Yeah, I don't know what's up with that. Bizarre. Anyway, I'm not going to worry about it. We've only got 2 hours to cover all of these incredible examples of, for lack of a better term, queerness in nature. So let's do that. Yeah. And Dina says, it showed some weird thing with the goal being in bits for me. Strange. Yeah, I don't, it seems like the proportions might still be correct here, but the, yeah. We can work with it. Sounds good. Thank you, Lord.
I'll just give you my message up front. Try not to go extinct.
Arikot, thank you so much for the follow there. Welcome to Paleontologizing. It's good to have you here. And holy cow, Fiona the T-Rex donated $410. Is that a glitch or is that real there? Holy cow. That is incredible. Holy moly. Clippers is just wanting to finish it real fast, eh? Thank you for doing this. Thank you for your donation there, Fiona. That is phenomenal.
Look, you don't have time to put dinosaurs in the dinosaur book.
Ami Sese Niche, thank you for the follow as well. Welcome, welcome. That is phenomenal, Fiona. Certainly worth a VIP right there. Thank you very much. I also didn't even mention this yet, but there's a bit of a competition going on with this raid train. Where did that graphic go? This content is no longer available. Okay, the link is not working on the Discord. Fiona already won the contest as Death Source. Well, that's the thing, is that during this raid train, with all of these different streamers, we're each competing to raise the most money for this charity. And the prize for that is that the stream that earns the most money will have that total matched by a mystery donor. Do you want to know the number to beat? I do want to know the number to beat, Lordy. Absolutely. Yes, please. And Anisha Cavell, thank you so much for the $50 donation right there. Splendid. Holy cow, Anisha. What are we at now? I can't actually see it on my screen here. We've got glitches galore. $550 raised so far out of 500. Extraordinary. This is brilliant. Brilliant. What was the figure from Ios's stream, Lordy? 1451.90. If we can beat that, then we beat Ios and then we win the whole thing. So far, that is the amount that's going to be matched by our mystery donor, but if we can exceed that today, that'll pay dividends. It is some in-house rivalry. Yes, indeed, literally, Claire Burr. Oh, good stuff. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. And happy Saturday to you too, Mr. Nobody. Welcome. Welcome. Yeah. We'll have to really push. We'll see, Lenina. Yeah, I'm already blown away. We've already exceeded our goal for today. And we're only, what, 20-something minutes in? Extraordinary. Yeah. Here, what I'm going to do here is... I don't know why our sub-goal widget is wigging out on us. There's some glitches going on that... promise aren't my fault. But, yeah. Thank you, says Anisha Cavell. Of course. Yeah. I really appreciate your support there. Extraordinary. Here. Let's get into some of the stuff that I set aside for today. Now here, given that I'm a dinosaur paleontologist, I work on dinosaurs, I dig up dinosaurs, I publish on them in the scientific literature, all that sort of thing. This channel is all about paleontology, hence the name Paleontologizing. And Asazi, thank you for the 32 months of support right there. I appreciate you. Yeah. Excellent. I appreciate you, Anisha. Going back to your game, enjoy. Asazi, thank you for the 32 months of support, helping make it possible for me to do this full time. I'm sorry, the what? The who? I didn't catch that. One more time? Can you repeat that? I didn't get it. Did anybody catch that? The what? Axeman 1984, thank you so much for the, Oh no, Darth Jacoby, thank you for the 13 months of support. Really appreciate that.
I can see that my 50,000 a year has been well spent.
And thank you, Axeman, for the 24 months of support. Holy cow. Extraordinary. We've got a hype train going. Appreciate that. Here. What was I talking about? Paleontology. I'm a paleontologist. When people are thinking about this kind of thing, when they're thinking about kind of the non-binary nature of biological sex in nature, sometimes they think of course, Jurassic Park. We'll let this be kind of our entry point for discussion today. Does anybody remember this scene right here? Jedi Mega Man, thank you for the 100 bits there. Appreciate that. I don't actually buy this explanation, but... I also love... As somebody who works in the field and everything, and does science and hangs out with scientists, I love Sam Neill's performance right here because it reads to me like a real scientist. He picks up this egg, and what does he do? He's looking at it, he's talking about this, and then he sniffs it. He's using all of his senses to try and gather as much information as he can. This is true. Little two-toed dromaeosaur footprints. Now, I always thought that was a neat scene. And as it turns out, the changing sex from female to male thing is not actually necessary for creatures like dinosaurs in order to reproduce. We have examples of this in the modern day with creatures like condors being able to actually do parthenogenesis. In the absence of males, a female can essentially clone herself in order to lay fertile eggs, which is pretty cool. So you don't even need the whole West African frog DNA thing. Dinosaurs most likely, at least some species would have been capable of doing that, I presume, because we have examples of that happening in the modern day, which is really cool. Yeah. So Deathsaurus says, so dinosaurs are able to change sex? No. That's not what we're talking about. There are lots of other animals that can do that. Dinosaurs wouldn't have even needed to, potentially. We've got a modern dinosaur, and we've got some non-dinosaur reptiles as well, like Komodo dragons. Here, too. These animals are capable of doing that without actually changing sex. Yeah. So yeah. Anywho. Also, I want to take this opportunity to thank very much Lenina and Fake Do It for donating $75 and $25 respectively. Thank you. That's another 100 right there. We are almost halfway to winning our fundraiser here. Let's see. Manage goals. That's not what we're doing. How do we update our charity goal here? It was just up and now it's gone. What's going on with this? Anyhow, it's true, Ken. Life does find a way. Still see the bar tracking at 650 out of 500. I'm going to try and up that goal, but I am not totally certain how to do that. Charity here. I don't know how to change it. I'm on the charity dashboard. Lordy, that's not working. Anywho. What I am going to do, though, let's see if I can do this for me. Donate to charity. $200. Donate now. Well, it'll put us a little bit closer, too. Conflict of interest, says Clever. Hey, it's a conflict of interest for a good cause. I could donate to my own charity push here, can't I? I'm proud to do it. Yeah. Excellent. And then, yeah. Good stuff. So let's take a look at a video from PBS Origins on... Well, it'll kind of help set the tone for what we're talking about today.
Are male and female...
So the title is The Origin of Gender. Gender is a human construct. This is something that we have as human beings that other animals don't really have. Biological sex is a thing that other creatures have. But gender is kind of a cultural human thing.
Female, the only two genders, and when do we start associating gender with certain roles in society? When I hear the word binary, my mind immediately jumps to gender and 80s movies about computers. And that's because outside of meaning something that has two sides or two parts, binary is often linked to the concept that there are two genders in the world, and every person falls squarely into one of these two categories.
Which is
and
not
since
true.
Lots of you Origin of Everything fans write in with questions and comments about things related to gender and gender norms, I wanted to spend this week getting down into an abbreviated history of how we got to the idea of binary gender, what the heck some of the differences between gender and sex are, how those two categories became linked, and why we started associating different tasks in society along the gender divide, with certain behaviors being ascribed to masculinity and others to femininity. Okay, so we have a lot to cover and very little time, but the natural place to start here seems to be, what is gender, and how does it differ from sex?
So this is really important, and given that I'm not a specialist in this area, I'm going to be a little bit clumsy in trying to explain these things. This is not my field of expertise, you know? So it's really handy to be able to have something like this with people who actually study this kind of thing, people who are used to speaking about this. Take a look.
So to start things off in something of an order from concrete to abstract,
even binary and
human
electronics
sex
is not
usually
interesting.
linked to biological and physical traits of the
Yeah.
body. These can include reproductive organs, hormones, chromosomes, with the old wisdom being that XX chromosomes signal females while XY chromosomes are indicative of males, outward appearance of the genitalia, and secondary sex characteristics, which kick in around puberty for humans. These traits include things like growing breasts, getting hairy, or producing all of that lovely oil and grease that makes our pits stink and our T-zones shine bright like a diamond. Although these are the ways that sex is determined or identified, it also involves a fair bit of fluidity. For example, there are people who are intersex, meaning that they share a variety of these traits across the sexual divide.
And this is more common than people realize, I think. There is an interesting, we'll pause for a second. No, I'm not interested in AI mode. Quit trying to force this garbage on me. Google, it's ridiculous. If anybody happens to have a link to this, I would love to see it. But there's a thing that I saw recently that I think kind of hit home, and it might help hammer home this point. When we're talking about things being non-binary in nature, that is important. It's important to consider. It's important to remember that. You might have two different poles of something that are two different poles or two different things that are the most common. So, like, when we're talking about intersex versus, like, male and female, you might say, well, intersex, it's a very rare thing. We can kind of disregard it. It's not important. That's kind of like saying, well, the universe is made of hydrogen and helium. And that's it. Those are the most common elements. It's like 99.9999999% of all elements in the universe are hydrogen and helium. So that's all it is. All the other stuff is not important. It doesn't matter. That's a ridiculous thing to say, though, because we ourselves are made up of all different kinds of atoms, different elements. When you're looking at the periodic table and just boiling it down to 2 different elements, hydrogen and helium, you're missing out on this incredible spectrum of things that might be more rare, but they're incredibly important to things like us as human beings or other organisms. Organisms aren't made of just hydrogen and helium. See the point that I'm making? It's a gross oversimplification. Exactly, Fiona the T-Rex. Yes, yes, yes. So saying that, like, oh, well, those other elements, they're so much more rare, they don't matter. It's a foolish thing to say. So yeah. Leap Year Girl says intersex in humans is around 1% of all people, or about 1 in 90 births, I think. Too bad we don't really learn that. Exactly. Anywho, Reiko says the majority of people alive are over 2 years old, so 1-year-olds either don't matter or don't even exist. Exactly, Reikadactylus. It's like saying that. Yeah. Anywho, well, there's a cool graphic about this. I wish I'd snagged it when I saw it ages ago. I haven't been able to find it recently, but let's get back to the video here.
People can have XX chromosomes associated with women, but present in most other ways as male, and vice versa.
Yep.
It's also possible to have a mixture of these traits that aren't easily quantifiable and don't align neatly with male or female designations. Although, in some of these cases, there are parents and healthcare providers who choose an assigned sex for a child born with a mixture of traits at birth. But while sex is mostly considered biological, gender is its more loosely defined cousin. Gender
Hello,
relates
Python.
to
How are you
the
doing?
performance
Hello,
of roles,
hello.
identities, and ideas surrounding masculine, feminine, or neutral traits. And
Yep.
more often
So when we say that this is a human thing, this is what we're talking about. This is in human society, you know?
performance of roles, identities, and ideas surrounding masculine, feminine, or neutral traits. And more often than not, we link gender to both outward behaviors and internal ideas about ourselves. A good example of performing gender in society would be a statement like, all girls' favorite color is pink. The first assumption is that girl lines up with female sex, and the second is that given the choice, most, if not all girls, will not only choose pink as their favorite color, but will also be naturally predisposed to liking pink over other colors. But this idea confuses cultural conditioning with a presumed biological determinism. And if you want more on pink for girls and blue for boys, then this is the perfect time to hop on over to our video on gendered clothing for a deeper explanation. Gender also blossoms outward into other areas of our lives and is often used as a measure for sexual desire, behavior, and societal roles. We also apply gender pretty widely and often, even to concepts and inanimate objects, more so than biological sex.
Yep.
Take, for example, some Indo-European languages like Spanish, German, and Latin, where gender is used to conjugate certain verbs or attach to nouns and pronouns. So
And with some of these, it even gets more complicated too. We're like, I think in German things can be either male or female or neuter. Anyway, it's like human beings are just culturally, we're kind of obsessed with the idea of gender in ways that are often confusing, not necessarily all that helpful. It's interesting, you know?
So while both sex and gender are not hard and fast across the board, both are more often than not linked together and then described to us using two choices.
Very funny,
Male
Wombat
sex
Hole.
aligning with masculine gender,
This is
and
what I'm
female
talking
sex
about,
aligning
yeah.
with feminine gender. But while the concept of two sexes and two genders is ingrained in us as the cultural norm, this hasn't always been universally true. That
Nope.
leads us to our next question. What are the alternatives to the binary gender model? Well, in fact, outside of the West, many cultures and countries have a history that recognizes either gender fluidity or gender categories that exist beyond the binary. Prior to colonization, the Incas worshipped a dual-gendered god, whose attendants, the Kwariwarmi, wore androgynous clothing and represented a third gender space. Among the Sakalavas of Madagascar, boys who were considered feminine in appearance were raised as girls and believed to have supernatural protection that prevented them from being harmed. In Hawaii, Kanaka Malawi indigenous societies had the mahu, who could be aligned with any biological sex, but expressed a gender role that was in between masculine and feminine. And the Bernicia of Albania are women who have sworn a vow of chastity and dress as men, a tradition that dates back as far as the 1400s, although their numbers have dwindled dramatically in recent years. So the concept of more than two genders has existed and still exists worldwide. But concepts that biological sex and gender could be fluid also existed in parts of Western Europe. Prior to the 18th century and the rise of Enlightenment thinking in Europe, there was a theory that men and women's reproductive organs could belong to a common sex, even though they were assigned to different gendered roles.
Gotcha,
So there
Paul
was
Python.
one
Interesting.
sex, but two genders. And
We don't have separate words for gender and sex in German? Oh, okay, I see what you mean. That's not like part of the verbiage, but you do have like nouns for that. Like there are adjectives, I'm sure, in order to describe that concept. Just like in English we say gender and sex are different things.
What are dinosaurs?
I'm sure you could translate that sentence to German. It would still make sense. Jesse, now, thank you for the follow. Welcome,
in
welcome.
the 2nd century AD,
Yeah.
Greek physician Galen noted, "Turn outward the woman's, turn inward, so to speak, and fold double the man, and you will find the same in both in every respect." That's right, he was of the opinion that women were essentially men with penises that had been flipped up inside of their bodies and not fully developed, and vice versa on the male side of things. Which isn't so kooky when you consider that physicians at that time also believed that women's female hysteria was caused by wandering wombs. And while this wasn't a universally held belief, the idea that male and female reproductive organs were somehow two sides of the same coin persisted until the Renaissance. And just like class, gender was given a hierarchy and attached to ideas about innate qualities. So someone of high birth was considered inherently better than someone from a lower class. And the same went with gender, which valued masculine traits and behaviors over all else.
So anyway, you see what we're talking about here? This is... I'm not a sociologist. I'm not an anthropologist. This sort of thing is outside of my realm of expertise, so I like to defer to other people who actually study these things when we're talking about it here. But I'm trying to get the point across that, like, gender in human society is a really complex, wishy-washy thing that kind of pervades lots and lots and lots of different aspects of culture. In nature, biological sex is something that's also often wishy-washy, a spectrum. There's lots of interesting things going on, and I think that for people who want to really cling to this idea of like traditional gender roles are, they're part of nature, they're set in stone, they're in our DNA. It's not how it actually is in reality. If you're trying to get nature to conform to your very human view of traditional gender roles, you gotta be less than honest, or you can't really know what you're talking about. That's kind of the point of today's stream. Yeah. And Jesse, now, hey, appreciate you. Thank you, thank you. I love the current topic. I'm glad you're here. Yeah. So here's a link to this video if you want to watch the rest of it from PBS Origins. We've got less than an hour and a half to continue with the rest of this, so we're going to move right along. I wanted to dispel a number of different myths or misconceptions about biological sex in nature. And when I say biological sex, what I'm referring to here is... And I wish I had like a proper definition I could just read to you, because, again, this is not my realm of expertise. But when I talk about biological sex in nature, I guess it kind of comes down to producing large or small gametes. So, ova, eggs, versus sperm. Generally, creatures that produce the small gametes, like sperm, we tend to call those male, and ones that produce the large gametes, ova or eggs, we tend to refer to as female. But these are not two discrete, different things. This is not... Don't think of this as like an essential difference between the two. Because many times in nature, they can switch. A given animal might change from one to the other, from producing small gametes to producing large gametes, or vice versa. And the conditions that determine whether a given individual produces small or large gametes can also be dependent on the environment. It can be really wishy-washy. A good example of this is a creature that I've been very, very excited about lately, and we've recently embarked on a whole streaming arc where we're talking about these creatures and hopefully going to be helping out with their conservation. I'm talking about leatherback sea turtles. The biological sex of sea turtles is not determined from something inherent to them. It's temperature dependent. I'll show you what I mean here. This is from the Carnegie Museum of Natural History when Matt LaManna, who was out in the field with us in Wyoming this year and last year too. He's the curator of paleontology there. This is his museum. We did a special event with the Carnegie Museum this summer, which was really cool. Anywho, let's get into it.
Hi, I'm Kaylin Martin, the Curatorial Assistant of Amphibians and Reptiles. I am here in the Alcohol House, which houses more than 250,000 amphibians and reptiles. We are currently on the turtle range. We have the largest North American freshwater turtle collection in the world.
Wow, I didn't know that.
2 years of my life, I have dedicated to these turtle hatchlings that you see behind me. There ended up being about 11,000 turtles in this collection. So why do we have so many? Well, Dr. Michael Ewert gave us this collection in 2005.
Paleo salute to him.
Work. He looked at
incredible.
temperature-dependent sex determination in turtles.
Here we go. This is what we're talking about.
Sex determination is the behavior that turtles have that when they're in the nest, dependent on what temperature the nest is, will yield different sexes. Hotter temperatures will yield females, and lower temperatures will yield males. So how is Dr. Ewert getting all of these turtles? Well, he would go out into the field and find gravid females,
Wombat Hole says that explains the gharial. It does, because another creature that has temperature-dependent sex determination are crocs, the crocodilians, like our gharial right here. So this one, I think, was a large adult female. There was a scan made of its skull, and I've 3D printed it here. I don't know if it's the same relationship as in turtles, where higher temperatures yield more females. But anyway, that is another critter that has this same kind of thing, where their biological sex is determined by outside conditions.
Means pregnant, bring back the females into the lab and incubate her eggs in a controlled setting. There are 351 turtle species in the world. This collection behind me, which is just one of 6 cabinets, looks at 95 different species of the 351.
Holy cow.
So that's almost a third. Right now, it is currently known that about 40 species of turtles are affected by temperature-dependent sex determination. So that means that when we're living in the Anthropocene, as we are now, with the rising temperatures, that is yielding more females. It just came out in Australia that 99% of sea turtles are female. You need males to perpetuate and sustain these populations. So why do we have so many? I mentioned earlier that we have about 11,000 turtle hatchlings, and that's so we can inform scientists who are starting conservation head starting programs. When you are doing a conservation head starting program, if you don't have your incubation temperature set at the right temperature that will yield 50% male and 50% female, you could have an influx of female if it's too high, or physical malformations will occur, or the eggs won't even hatch. Through this collection, we hope to unlock more information about temperature-dependent sex determination and help conservation researchers counteract the negative effects that we're having on the climate.
Pretty cool stuff. Here is a link to this video right here, if you want to learn more about that. There you go. let's take a look at this video here.
So it's been known that temperature affects the sex of sea turtles for quite a while, about 40 years now. So what we want to look at is whether there's a difference in the switch point that produces male and female offspring between populations. We looked at this in flatback turtles and green sea turtles, and we looked at these across the northwest of Australia. So our research found that there's quite a difference in the switch.
And Vexy says, could a population go extinct or become endangered because there's not enough males being born due to global warming? That's the fear, yeah. So with sea turtles, there's currently 7 living species of sea turtle. We'll find them on our tree of life here. Every single one of these species is either endangered or threatened, or vulnerable. Kemp's ridley, olive ridley, loggerhead, hawksbill, green sea turtle, flatback turtle, and of course, my favorite around here, the leatherback turtle. Each one of these is red, except for this one. I think this is not evaluated, but they're also threatened with extinction. Take my word for it. So out of all 7 species of sea turtle that are around today, all of them are threatened with extinction, and as far as I know, all of these have temperature-dependent sex determination. So with rising global temperatures, you're getting more and more and more female sea turtles being born. And if you reach that tipping point where there's basically not enough males to help propagate the species, you'll have population crashes in all of these guys. I'll see you later, Leap Year Girl. Thanks for being here. So that's why this is so important, you know?
Switch point between male producing and female producing temperatures in sea turtle populations, particularly in flatback turtles. And this means that at different temperatures you get different numbers of males and females between these different populations. So this research was done in collaboration with the West Australian Marine Science Institution as part of the Kimberley Node projects. We also worked alongside the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions, and worked with a whole range of Indigenous ranger groups up in the northwest, particularly Warrnambool Gambra, Midgerong Gadgerong and the Neel Ranges. So this research really sets precedent for modelling climate change impacts on sea turtle populations. So now that we have these population-specific parameters of the sex-determining mechanisms, we can actually look at how climate change is going to affect each population in a case-by-case basis. And this is something that's really needed in the northwest of Australia, especially with the impacts of climate change.
There you go. Let me give you a link to that video real quick too before I forget.
So
there we go. And Rahab says, could male turtles hypothetically be raised in a controlled environment then released in the future? There are several sea turtle conservation groups that are looking into this right now. Because if they just don't have male turtles being born in the wild, that species isn't going to be around for very long. And so basically creating males in the laboratory and releasing them out in the wild might be a way to help try to get those population numbers back up until we can get a hold of, you know, until we could do something about climate change. Yeah, and there you go. Thank you, Claire. What are we at right now in terms of our numbers? Let's see here. It's not showing on my page, so somebody clue me in. $910. Holy cow. We might win this thing. Phenomenal. Okay. Excellent. So anyway, we talked about temperature-dependent sex determination. That's non-chromosomal. It's the outside temperature affects what sex the embryo will be, male or female. It sounds kind of crude or crass, but the mnemonic for remembering this is actually pretty handy. It's hot chicks and cool dudes. Higher temperatures yield females, lower temperatures yield males. Hot chicks and cool dudes, if you want to be able to remember that for the future. So that goes to show that biological sex in something like sea turtles is not something that's innate. The outside temperature determines that. It's also true for critters like crocodilians, like this gharial skull right here. So that's kind of the point that I'm making. Biological sex is squishy, oftentimes in nature, dependent on outside factors. It's not something that's innate. And Niffler, thank you for the 25 months.
That's how dinosaurs are. Unpredictable.
I appreciate that, Niffler. Thank you, thank you.
Another month of fun, information, fieldwork and learning. Thank you for sharing science in such an accessible way.
Thank you, Niffler, for your kind words and your 25 months of support. I really appreciate that. Holy cow. Good stuff. And, let me also give shouts out to those people who have been donating. I wish we got alerts for this, too. $25 from Haraz. Thank you, Haraz. $25 from DeWangles. Rahab McCullough, $10 right there. Old Mama Dragon, $50. Incredi Mike, $10. And Trombone Dalek, $50 right there. Holy moly. Extraordinary. I really appreciate that. This is stupendous. What's our figure at right now? $10.20. Holy cow! I think we might win this. We shall see. Holy cow. All right. This is making me wish that I put together like a little PowerPoint presentation or something like this, where we could kind of cross off these different kind of myths or misperceptions about biological sex in nature. So we had that it's innate, that it's like, oh, it's always determined by chromosomes or something. It's just a natural way. No, in a lot of creatures, like crocs and sea turtles, the sex of the embryo is determined by the ambient temperature. There's another myth or misperception that, oh, well, the female animal, the one who produces the large gametes, is the one who gives birth. Only females can get pregnant, right? Right? Wrong. Some of you probably have guessed the example that we're going to pull up right now. But there you go. Rhacodactylus has got it. This dad-to-be has a surprising secret. His potbelly isn't from eating too much. He's actually pregnant.
What?
Yes, it's true.
In seahorses, it's actually the males that get pregnant. So the females provide the eggs to the males, which they store inside their brood pouch. It's inside here that the males fertilize their eggs and store them while they develop. This way the seahorse can ensure he's the father, and it also keeps the eggs safe. The males hold the babies for up to 25 days before he releases them into the water.
It's a long gestation
And
period.
they can give birth to around 1,000 offspring.
Sure, for like a ray
But
fin
due to
fish, right?
predation and the young not being able to swim very well, only a few per 1,000 actually reach adulthood.
Wow, who knew that about seahorses? If you'd like to learn more...
Yes, I think a lot of people knew that about seahorses, but that's pretty cool. Here's a link right here, and there is a longer video with some of these same folks. Let's take a look at how that works exactly, though. How does such a situation like that kind of paradigm where the male is the one giving birth, how does that evolve in the first place? Let's talk about that. And Rahab Mahakala, yeah, this is true.
In the shallow coastal waters, corals and seaweeds soak up the sunlight, and they spring to life. It's an ideal home for long-snouted seahorses. After days of courting, this couple is ready to mate. Seahorses are unique because only the males get pregnant.
And Yenzoku says, Danny, can you explain parthenogenesis? We'll get to that in a little bit, yes. Why was the first species able to reproduce through parthenogenesis? Only found in insects. It's found in a lot of other animals too, including some dinosaurs. We'll get to that, Yenzoku.
During mating, a female will transfer her eggs into the male's brood pouch, where he then fertilizes them. But for this...
So that's the thing, is that the fertilization still occurs internally, but it occurs inside of the male. She's transferring her eggs to him. He'll fertilize them when they're in his body.
this inexperienced couple, the belly-to-belly bumping is
Uh-oh,
awkward.
they're losing a lot of babies
and when
there.
the embrace isn't made smoothly, some eggs can be lost. This male had perfected the dance. He is now a pregnant father, carrying around 1,500 eggs, which are all deeply embedded in the walls of his pouch. He is committed to parenting, providing the embryos with crucial nutrients. And after a few weeks, he releases his young.
There we go.
His
There's the
pouch
babies.
opens, and contractions push them out. The young are tiny, and although they're on their own, they've been given the best chances of survival.
So they're able to partially develop inside of dad. Pretty cool. So how does this work? What's the deal here?
Seahorses belong to the family of cyngnathids, which also includes sea dragons and pipefish.
Yeah, nice.
It's a
Leafy sea
family
dragons are
of
some of my
slender
favorite
fish
extant fish.
with
They're so
tube-shaped
cool.
snouts, but cyngnathids are best known for the way they care for their young. After
Oh, I also want to take this opportunity to thank Marcy Walks Dogs and Nelf for the donations there. Excellent. Another $10 and $42 respectively. What are we at right now? This is that's pretty excellent. I think we might win this thing. 1,072. That is phenomenal. Holy cow. Thank you, Marcy Walks Dogs and Nelf. Excellent.
females lay their eggs, the males then fertilize and carry them until they hatch. Male pregnancy.
If the situation calls
Eleanor Rose, thank you for the follow. Welcome, welcome.
Grew spears which projected from his body armor.
Good stuff.
Is unique only to cyngnathids, and it comes in different forms. In sea dragons, males have a spongy patch under their tail where they can carry their brood. Around 200 eggs are attached to this weedy sea dragon. He'll care for them for up to 6 weeks, and when the time comes for them to hatch, he'll simply shake them off.
Interesting. So in relatives of seahorses, let's go to our tree of life here. There we go. We're going from sea turtles to seahorses. From reptiles over to ray-finned fishes, actinopterygians. This is a really interesting clade right here, these guys, the seahorses. 61 species in this subfamily, Hippocampinae. And they are related to the pipefishes and the sea dragons. There we go. Pipefishes and seahorses, 323 species. Holy cow. So within this group of really cool ray-finned fishes, there's different reproductive strategies. Some of them are almost halfway to the male carrying the babies inside him kind of condition that seahorses have. So these sea dragons, and here the male is carrying all of the eggs, not inside his body, but attached to it on the outside. How cool is that? It's kind of easy to imagine how that condition in seahorses would evolve, given that you have kind of the halfway point in some of their relatives. Really neat.
Seahorses and pipefish have a brood pouch to carry their eggs. This Honshu pipefish is heavily pregnant. He has a partially open pouch, which means his eggs aren't completely covered. Instead, they're nestled within a slit that runs down his belly. But seahorses have closed pouches. For this pair of hot-bellied seahorses, if mating is successful, the male will hold the eggs in his pouch and seal the opening. Male care is often seen in fish.
Yep.
For example, in mouth-brooding species.
So again, it kind of goes to demonstrate that another thing a lot of people assume that, like, oh, well, you know, in nature, the female is the one who takes care of the offspring. That is not always true. So, like you said there, male care for young is something that's really common in ray-finned fish like this, you know? Yeah.
It tends to evolve from
emus
fish
are another example
that
one, but oh yeah.
externally fertilize their eggs, and show no parental care. This may also be the case for male pregnancy in seahorses. In many reef fish, breeding pairs swim to the water surface and quickly spawn into the currents. And it's possible a similar behavior in ancient cyngnathids may have led to a close association between males and their offspring.
Interesting.
Are you a fan of dinosaurs?
Klaus CO, thanks for the follow.
Angry if you aren't.
Welcome, welcome. It's good to have you here.
Protective territorial males that stayed close to their eggs at spawning would have helped guarantee they were the fathers.
Anyway, this is really cool. I'm going to give you a link to this. We're not going to watch the whole thing. But I love that this gives a window into how these systems may have initially evolved in these animals. Because this is such a diverse group of creatures, there's the link right there for you. 323 species within Cygnathidae. We've got kind of a spectrum going from just like external fertilization to external fertilization with the males holding the eggs on the exterior of their body, to internal fertilization where the female passes eggs to the male, they go inside of him and they get fertilized internally inside of his body. It's really cool, like, looking at this from an evolutionary perspective, just going, how did these traits first evolve? And kind of seeing each of these steps in different members of this diverse group. That's super, super cool. Pretty darn neat. So there we go. We're going to be passing the raid along in 1 hour to Taffel, who's going to be talking all about, well, as I understand it, about birds. I hope I'm not ruffling any feathers here or stepping on any phalanges by talking about birds a little bit, Taffel, because I know this is going to be your thing. But is it okay with you if I talk about genandromorphism in birds? We have here in our background a half male, half female northern cardinal. The more birds, the better? Excellent, Taffel. Yeah, you're talking about that bird too? Cool, cool, cool. We won't dwell on it then too much. But, yeah. This will be a concept that gets reinforced in our next stream here. In Taffel stream, after we raid it. But anyway, this example from nature helps counter the idea that, like, oh, well, you know, in nature, it's just natural to have males and females, and, you know, it's either one or the other. You can't have both. Like, no, you can have both in some cases. It's been observed many times. Check this out. Here's a news report about this.
A longtime bird watcher in Pennsylvania had what he's calling a once-in-a-lifetime encounter.
James Hill took these photos of a rare northern cardinal that is half male and half female. The bird's right side is red, like the male in its species, and the lefty is brownish-white, like a female.
Check that out.
Scientists say the egg from which the bird developed
split
likely
down
had
the middle.
2 sex chromosomes instead of 1. In theory, this...
And that's... So birds also have 2 sex chromosomes, but they're different than they are in mammals? We'll talk about that a little bit, and I'm sure Taffel will be reinforcing these points.
Real cardinal could mate with either a male or female bird. Hill said this was the most exciting find in his nearly 50 years of bird watching. Yeah.
Pretty neat. I've never seen that in the wild. Holy moly, is that cool. Yeah. Thank you, Charlie's Dragon, right there, for the $15. And Lordy for the additional $100. Holy moly, what are we at right now? What's our title currently? What is it? 1187? Oh, yeah. We've got to beat what? 1400? What's the number to beat here? We'll see. 1492. Oh. 1452? Yeah. So Dances with Dirt says, that's not exactly chimerism. What is that? Excellent question. Here's a little explainer video about it.
Nature, that eternal mixmaster of genetics, has produced one concoction of chromosomes that is truly a binary marvel. Animals that are both male and female. Their split gender is often clear from remarkably distinct physical displays. Males and females of a species most commonly possess different sexual characteristics determined by their chromosomes. This sexual dimorphism is clear not only in reproductive organs.
Rahab says that's hermaphroditism. It's not actually that. There's a specific name for this phenomenon where you've got half male, half female, and it's like split sagittally across your body in animals with bilateral symmetry. Check it out.
But frequently in physical ornamentation, like the colorful patterns on butterfly wings.
Yeah.
But every so often, nature tosses a chromosomal curveball and creates a unique genetic phenomenon. Described with the mouthful of a moniker, gin andromorphism, this half-and-half sexual mashup is found mainly in the insect
Half and half, get it?
but has also been discovered in crustaceans and even birds.
Yep.
It expresses itself physically in either mosaic patterns, where the male and female ornamentation is combined in a patchwork fashion, or in striking bilateral displays.
Yeah,
where an
look at
animal
that.
appears split down the
Wild.
middle, one side female, the other male. Research suggests gin andromorphism occurs when the sex chromosomes fail to separate at or soon after egg fertilization. In fact, insect studies have noted the two-toned bilateral asymmetry seems to take place between 8 and 64 cells, while the mosaic
Interesting.
patterns manifest in later reproductive development. The condition is rare enough to make each instance popular among biologists. In Illinois, researchers recently followed
It become popular among biologists. That's a funny way to put that. Popular. They mean interesting or fascinating or something that's worthy of study. The popular. I would have worded that
to
differently.
make each instance popular among biologists. In Illinois, researchers recently followed a
And holy cow, Reaganation, thank you for the $50 donation to QueerCare there. Really appreciate that, Reaganation. Thank you very much. Good stuff. We're at 12:37 now. Oh boy. Holy cow. I think we might make it.
split northern cardinal for more than a year. The
There we
bird
go.
didn't seem to sing or mate, nor did it fight with other males, as typical male cardinals do over food and territory. After 15 months, it disappeared before researchers were able to trap it for a DNA sample.
Ah.
Mostly, the cardinal reminded researchers how amazing gin andromorphism is in the wild, and how little we understand it in most species.
Pretty cool. Neat stuff. Excellent little video from slate.com there. Here's a link there in the chat. And for a little bit better detail on how this sort of thing works, let's take a look at a SciShow video here with some more background on this. First Anomaly says, I've never heard of this split gender before. That's the thing, it's not actually gender. We talked about this at the beginning of stream. Gender is a human thing. If you're talking about gender in other kinds of animals, they don't really have it. Biological sex is a different thing than gender. Gender is a human construct, It's like saying, I don't know. It's almost like talking about an animal's niche, which is a biological concept. That's what it does in its ecosystem. It's a top predator, or it's a primary producer, or it's a this, or it's a that. Versus, like, in humans, we have a job or an occupation, What is your trade? What does it say on your business card? It's like, that's a human concept in the same way that gender is. It's part of, like, human culture, human society. And it can also be very wishy-washy. The biological concept is biological sex. So do you produce large or small gametes? That's kind of like the basis for it. And even that can be really wishy-washy too. Anyway, gender is something we perform, not something we are. There you go, Ricodactylus. Yeah. And the same way that, like, a job is something that you perform, an occupation, In most places, people aren't born plumbers or tax accountants or paleontologists. Well, I don't know. Maybe I was born a paleontologist, but we could argue about that. But yeah, software versus hardware. Kind of, Rahab Yeah, that's a nice analogy. I like that. It's almost like biological sex is hardware and gender is software. Sort of. I'm sure that analogy would break down at some point, but it's maybe a nice shorthand for thinking about this. I like that a lot. Yeah, snapping turtle, attorney at law. Incredible. There you go. Yeah. They have theories of what caused it. We're going to talk about that right here. Game over. Check it out.
You ever seen a crazy-looking butterfly or bird that looks like two different individuals smashed together? Not like a griffin or a centaur with two different species, but two members of the same species that have different markings, like a butterfly with two different wing patterns, or a lobster that's red on one side and brown on the other. You probably haven't, because they're rare, but they are out there. They're known as gynandromorphs. These organisms have both male and female characteristics, often split right down the center of their bodies. The condition can be found in about 1 in 10,000 butterflies and other insects, but also in crustaceans, especially lobsters and other arthropods. So, how does such a thing happen? Well, all sexually reproducing animals begin as a single fertilized egg or zygote.
Reganation says, my grandfather once caught a lobster that was half blue and half red. There you go. Probably a gynandromorph.
That divides itself again and again through mitosis. One cell turns...
And Credit Mike says, okay, but I want to know about centaurs now. Well, this is a different kind of thing. This is A, a real thing and not like a mythological creature. But B, a crucial difference here is that centaurs are not split down the sagittal plane. You know, a centaur here, for one thing, it's not really split. It's got 6 limbs. Yeah. I'm going to say he's presenting as male to me, but I don't know. I guess we'd have to ask them. But if a centaur were a similar concept to this, then it would be like the right side would be a horse and the left side would be a person. And do we have a name for that kind of thing? Centaur split along sagittal plane. Has anybody drawn art of this? No, this is the closest we're gonna get. Make Casey draw. It'd be really difficult for that critter to walk, I would think. It's called nightmare fuel, says Reiko. Yeah. Anywho, let's continue.
Into 2 and 2 turning into 4 and so on.
Oh, by the way, the Raven, thank you for your donation there. Really appreciate the Raven. What's our figure at right now?
To make a baby animal. Now, in mammals, those divided cells differentiate themselves later on in development, so when they first split, they can turn into pretty much any tissue. But in arthropods, all of those early cell divisions are determinate. That means that every cell has a particular inflexible destiny from the very beginning. So, for example, when a butterfly zygote first divides, those first 2 resulting cells will each determine the left and right sides of the animal. The second division determines what will be the front and the back, and the third assigns top and bottom, and so on. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that before each cell splits, it has 2 copies of the organism's DNA coiled up in pairs of chromosomes, one set for each new cell. And that information includes the organism's sex, determined by chromosomes we call X and Y. In butterflies, XY is the female and XX is the male.
That's interesting. They have the same sex chromosomes as mammals do? I find that surprising because, here, our closed captions aren't working. Shoot. There we go. That is surprising to me. Because birds have a totally different sex chromosome setup. Yeah, I expect it to be WZ like in birds. Yeah, Dr. Hubs. Interesting. In birds, the female is that's the one with ZW. And then the male is ZZ. So in that one, the male is like you could almost call it the default. And it's the opposite as in mammals. So it's almost like bird females are more like mammal males, except they produce the larger gametes. It's interesting, you know? Biological sex is messy and complex and It's a lot of gray areas there.
And yes,
it's fascinating
the
stuff.
opposite of how it is in humans.
Yeah.
If there happens to be a mutation in one of these sex chromosomes, usually the information can still be read. Like if an animal ends up with just one X and no Y, it'll be female. If it gets 3 X's, it's male. But if something goes wrong during the earliest stages of mitosis, and the sex chromosomes don't properly separate, one of the new cells may have too many chromosomes while the other doesn't have enough. So if this
Perhaps as nature's design can be summed up as lol.
happens during the development of, say, a male swallowtail butterfly, which would normally be XX, it might end up with one cell only having one X, making it female, and then the other cell with 3 X's, making it male. Then, all the subsequent divisions from those 2 cells would be all male and all female, and you'd get a bilateral gynandromorph, one that looked like a half male and half female just stuck together. Now, if the error occurs in a later division, you might end up with a more patchy mix or mosaic of male and female characteristics. But gynandromorphy is not the same thing as hermaphroditism.
So here we go. This is what I was talking about, where a bilateral gynandromorph is not the same thing as a creature exhibiting hermaphroditism. These are different concepts here. Hank's going to explain.
Which is when an organism has both male and female sex organs. Depending on when the error occurs and what the anatomy of the animal is like, gynandromorphs aren't necessarily hermaphroditic, although no matter what, it's likely to be sterile. And as far as we know, gynandromorphy isn't possible in humans or other mammals because our ovaries and testicles release specific hormones that promote either female or male traits. And these dominant hormones can actually override abnormalities in our sex chromosomes.
So I think this explains some of the complexity around people who are born intersex. Yeah, depending on which hormones happen to be, I think, expressed with greater force, that kind of determines much of the person's outward appearance, like how much their sex is expressed through their through their external appearance, through their morphology, essentially, their phenotype. Does that make sense? Again, I'm not an expert in this kind of thing. I'm not an anthropologist, so if I'm majorly pooching anything, my apologies. But that's my understanding. Yeah.
Consider it just one more way in which sexual reproduction and just life on Earth
That's
in general
neat, Claire. That's
can
very
be
cool.
downright weird. Thanks for watching this SciShow Dose. If you'd like to keep getting smarter...
Anyway, let me give you a link to this. Thank you, Hank. Good stuff. Yeah. So we are technically proofed against that? Interesting, says Gravity. Not really proofed against it, it's just that it works differently in humans. So, based on the ways that our cells divide, we don't get that sort of bilateral, half male, half female, like you can get in things like butterflies or birds. But, yeah, it's... Again, what did he say right there? Let's go back to that line. Yeah.
As hermaphroditism, which is when an organism has both male and
Hey, androgynous water. How you doing? Welcome,
when
welcome.
the error occurs and what the anatomy of the animal is like, gynandromorphs aren't necessarily hermaphroditic, although no matter what, it's likely to be sterile. And as far as we know, gynandromorphy isn't possible in humans or other mammals because our ovaries and testicles release specific hormones that promote either female or male traits. And these dominant hormones can actually override abnormalities in our sex chromosomes.
So, interesting stuff. Charlie's Dragon says, yeah, I saw a TikTok by a woman who is intersex. She had XY chromosomes, which, if you're using chromosomes and only chromosomes to determine somebody's sex, then you'd say, oh, well, she's male then. But that's not how it works, you know? She had a complete androgen hormone insensitivity, so her body didn't react to testosterone, and so her body developed as a woman, and that's how she identifies. Interesting. With human beings, like, we can try and impose roles or definitions or labels on people based on their chromosomes and stuff like that, but oftentimes it just does not make sense. Like, the best way to determine somebody's gender is just to ask them, you know? What are you? We are complex creatures that have got rich inner lives, and we know who we are, you know? the best way to determine who somebody is by asking them, you know? If you have a habit of going around and not asking people their names and just assigning names to them, people aren't going to like you very much. You know, that's not a very pro-social way of behaving. If you want to know who somebody is, you ask them, you know? Whether it's their name or whether it's their gender identity. It's like, you know, you can make assumptions about people, and that works to a certain point, you know? Like if somebody's wearing a name tag, it might make sense to call them by that name. If somebody has gender presenting in a certain direction, then like, you know, in the day-to-day, it might be safe to generally make assumptions, but if somebody corrects you, it's like, listen to them, you know? Does that make sense? Anywho, assumptions have got me in trouble before. Many apologies, and it happens sometimes while that whole. The point is, like, don't be a jerk, you know? Don't assume you know somebody's name, and if you make a mistake, like, you know, just say, oh, I'm sorry, shoot, let's move on. Yeah, just ask, be polite, that's it. There you go, Gravity, yes, indeed. Anywho, with that said, let's continue on here. Let's take a look at some odd animal specimens.
Inside this jar.
So this is from a video called, the channel called Odd Animal Specimens, and each of these is an example of a different creature that kind of subverts expectations with regard to biological sex. Take a look at this.
Is, boom, this here is a clownfish. You may be familiar with one of these. They're those kind of orange and white tropical fish. I'm pretty sure that this one is a female because it's pretty large. But here's the thing. It wasn't always a female.
Yep. I'll let that tantalize you for a second. Our next myth, or our next misperception that nature kind of explodes when you get to studying it, is that creatures are born a certain sex in all cases, and then they stick with that, you know? Males are males and females are females. And it's not like one can change to the other. Like, no, that actually happens so many times in nature. It's kind of extraordinary. So we have examples of this in the world of bony fishes, ray-finned fishes especially. Take a look at this little video right here. He says, I say we'd understand each other. Not that we can talk to each other, but it just happened naturally. I kissed her once. It's actually him, but I'm the only person she will let do it. So that is a Japanese fish called a kabadai. So kabadai are related to sheephead, Claire. My name is Hiroyuki Arakawa. I'm a scuba diver. The first time I went diving, I was 18 years old. I'm 79 years old now. So what was that? 60 years ago? Thank you, Salamander, for the $50 donation there. Phenomenal. Really appreciate that, Salamander. What's our figure at now? $12.92? Phenomenal. And Eleanor Rose, thanks for being here. They say there's actually a really interesting study on a woman who got pregnant and had kids, but when karyotyped ended up having XY chromosomes. Turns out human biology is really complicated. Yeah, who knew? So much of nature is. Being in the water, you can be so isolated. It's your own world. I like being in the deep waters. We decided to build a shrine gateway. Shrine's gate is at a depth of 56 feet. Yoriko lives by the shrine's gate. I think it was around 30 years ago that I first met Yoriko. She's called a kabadai in Japan. He keeps saying she. Japanese, as I understand it, as a language, doesn't have like gendered names. It's not like German where like every noun has a gender. Japanese doesn't have that, so I don't know if this is in the translation or if he's actually referring to this critter as female. But this is a male right here. With some caveats. With some interesting things going on. We'll get to that. If you look closely from the front, they look like they have a human face. When you look really close, you think it's someone you know. And holy cow, B-Doc, thank you so much for the $50 donation right there. I appreciate that tremendously. We're now at $13.42. This is phenomenal. Thank you, B-Doc, for your support for QueerCare. That's phenomenal. Good stuff. I love his stained glass piece right here, because this has a kabadai in it. Look at that big lump on the forehead. Also has an ocean sunfish and a whale shark. Super cool. So one day she was by the shrine's gate. She was exhausted. She couldn't catch her own food. I fed her about 5 crabs every day for about 10 days. She's a lot better now. I think anyone can get animals' attention by feeding them. But to touch or interact with them is harder to accomplish. I'm not sure if it's the nature of this kabadai or not, but it's probably because there is a sense of trust between us. I guess she knows that I saved her. That I helped her when she was badly injured. That's so cool. For me to be able to just do that, I'm proud. I have an amazing sense of accomplishment in my heart. That's lovely. So this creature here, a kabadai, I think it's funny that he referred to this animal as she, because strictly speaking, that's a male, sort of. It's interesting how this works. Take a look at this right here. This is from the BBC, and so unfortunately you won't hear the audio in the VOD. I've got to do some stuff because BBC likes to copyright claim things like this. But check this out. Lovely piece narrated by David Attenborough. So this is that same kind of fish that we just saw right here. Not these guys. Not this guy. Here we go. Kabudai. Name is derived from Japanese. The males have the big bulging forehead like that. It's the one that our diver friend there. Our diver friend was buddies with a male kabadai. Look at the difference between the male and female. So there's some strong sexual dimorphism there. Males and females look very different. But they don't start off that way. So the females are more common than the males. Humphead wrasse. Exactly, Salamander, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they get to a certain age and a certain size, and they're like, not associating with you anymore. Why is that? There's a very good reason. So here's the thing. All of these fish are born female. They're born as large gamete producers. So they produce ova, eggs. Until a female grows to a certain age and a certain size, she starts to transform into a male. Again, that's where all of the males of this species come from. Yep. This is typical for this species. This is how they propagate themselves. How cool is that? There you go. Again, this is how this species works. And this is true for a lot of different species. So this is a male now. Yep. So this is how they fight. Pretty cool. Oof, look at that big scratch. Yowza. So this newly minted male is now going to hold down this territory and reproduce with the females in his territory. Yep. So it's an interesting strategy for producing a lot of young. How cool is that? Really, really neat. Here's a link to that video right there. So this is true for Kabudai. Looking for them on our tree of life here. There we go. The humphead wrasse. Yeah. And Game Over says, so when the scuba diver met that fish, it could have been female at the time? Maybe that's why he said she? I don't think so. I'm not sure he's actually aware that they change sex through ontogeny, through their life history. There's the humphead wrasse right there. He probably would have thought it was a different fish, honestly. So there's another relative of these guys. I'm not sure how many members of this group exhibit that same sort of thing. So this is called protogynous hermaphroditism. Changing from female to male over the course of your ontogeny. During your individual life history, one individual organism changes from female when they're younger to male when they're older. Protogynous hermaphroditism. There is that term there in the chat for you. There's a fish that we have off the coast of California here. It's related to the Kabudai. It's called a California sheephead, and they do the same exact thing. Let's see if we can find them on our tree of life and see how close they are. But these are one of my favorite fishes to see at, say, the Monterey Bay Aquarium. They're just really charismatic and cool. Male and female. So So there you go. They start off as juveniles, they look like that, and they become female. Well, then they essentially start off as females. And only those females who are able to get enough food and grow large enough, only those individuals will eventually become males. None of these fish are born male. None of them produce sperm early on. It's only, they have to like go through the female stage before eventually, if they're lucky and healthy enough, successful enough, then they become male. Really interesting strategy for a creature. So yeah. And holy moly, Fiona the T-Rex, an additional $110. Incredible. Thank you. Does that, what does that put us at right now? $14.52. Just past Ios? Holy moly, everybody. I don't even know what to say. Shoot. Extraordinary. This is a friendly competition, exactly, Wombat Hole. Somebody else might still beat me after this. We'll see. But they're gonna have their work cut out for them. That is phenomenal. Huge thanks to everybody who donated. That is spectacular. Raising money for a really good cause here, and I'm so proud of this community. Holy moly, everybody. Yeah, like I said, the this whole raid train with what, 12 different channels. It's a friendly competition where the channel that raises the most money will have their amount matched by a special anonymous donor, which is incredible. And we do still have 50 minutes. Exactly, Fiona the T-Rex. We can make it even tougher for somebody else to beat us there, which will mean that there will be more money for this important charity. Fantastic. Yeah. So there's, to get back to our topic here, given we've got less than half an hour left before we raid into Taffle Taffle. Here, take a look at this. Another species of fish that does this too.
In coral reefs off the coast of Florida, a species of fish called the bluehead wrasse is helping.
So bluehead wrasse are related to Cabidae and California sheephead. They're not super closely related, but they're, well, let's find out. California sheephead, bluehead wrasse. There we go. And thank you, Green Herring, for the $50 right there. And Fiona the T-Rex, an additional $48. Holy moly, $15.02. Extraordinary. That is spectacular. I can't tell you how awesome that is. $15.50 now. That is bonkers. So that matched will be $3,100. You've effectively raised $3,100, Chad, for QueerCare. This is spectacular. Androgynous Water says, as a genderqueer person, it's so good to see that kind of support. It's important stuff. This warms my heart. I don't even know what to say. Phenomenal. We could make it 3,200, says Fiona the T-Rex. We could. We'll see what happens. Spectacular. Yeah. All right, bluehead wrasse. Right here. How close is that to our California sheephead? Bluehead wrasse. 2. California sheephead. So these are 2 different species. They're both wrasses. But it looks like they split from one another. Where would that be? Right here. 705 species in this group. I don't know if we have a good sense for when they diverged. Aussie plays YT. Thanks for that hot new sound. Thank you for your raid. Welcome, raiders. It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Shoot. My name is Danny Anduza, dinosaur paleontologist. We're doing a special fundraising stream for QueerCare. And we're talking all about instances in the natural world among different organisms where, especially animals, where the, like, biological sex binary breaks down. We talked about creatures that transform from male to female or female to male over the course of their lifetimes. We just talked about how there's lots of different creatures like, say, crocs and sea turtles, where their biological sex is determined by temperature. So, like, the eggs will either yield males or females based on the temperature of the nest. We talked about different instances where sometimes a creature is born half male and half female. Turns out that the whole, like, sex is binary thing, that's not true in many, many cases in the natural world. It's really fascinating to learn about. Yeah. Napster Block, how are you doing? Hello, hello. Yeah. Anywho, we have just raised... What's our figure at now? $1,550? $1,550 for QueerCare. Excellent. Sex is bimodal rather than binary. Exactly, Fiona the T-Rex. Yes. Yes. Anyway, so the bluehead wrasse, related to the California sheephead and the cobbidae. Let's check this out.
In coral reefs off the coast of Florida, a species of fish called the bluehead wrasse is helping scientists understand sexual development. Researchers are interested in a striking change the small yellow females undergo in their social groups.
Yep.
When the larger dominant male in the group leaves, the largest female
Leaves
changes
or gets
sex
eaten.
and takes the male's place just days later.
Yep.
Scientists have documented sex changes in many species of fish, but they still don't have a complete picture of what molecular mechanisms drive the change. To help figure that out, researchers from Australia, New Zealand, and the US removed dominant males
So
from
that,
groups
yeah,
of bluehead
plants
wrasse in
are
the waters off
all
Florida,
over the place,
then
yeah.
analyzed tissue samples from the remaining fish as the sexual transformation was in progress. What they found is that the transitioning female starts behaving differently within hours after the male is removed, and the
That's
fish's
so
coloring
fast.
becomes darker as it eventually develops the distinctive blue head of a male. To investigate how these changes correlate with changes
That's
in
so
the fish's
cool.
genes, the researchers analyzed gonad cells from the transitioning fish. They found extensive shifts in gene activity, and in the pattern of methyl groups attached to the fish's DNA, a modification that can affect the function of certain genes. For example, genes associated with the production of female hormones turn off. As estrogen levels collapse, there's a gradual
Interesting.
increase in genes responsible for producing androgens, hormones associated with male reproductive activity.
Interesting. So basically she stops producing female estrogens, right? Female estrogens, that kind of hormone. And then is kind of down to like a baseline, and then the androgens ramp up and she becomes male. Pretty interesting.
Ovarian tissue also starts to degrade and is replaced by testicular tissue, which starts producing sperm within 8 to 10 days.
That's so
The
fast.
researchers think this genetic rewiring might get triggered by increased levels of cortisol, a stress hormone that spikes in female fish soon after the male disappears from the group.
Huh.
The team hopes a better understanding of how cells get reprogrammed in this tropical fish might help scientists understand how genes are turned off and on in other animals, and even humans.
Pretty neat. That's really cool stuff. Here's a link to that video right there. I wonder why the cortisol spikes. It might just be they get really stressed out when they don't have that one male around. It's like, somebody's got to do that. Somebody step up, and then somebody does. It is, I guess, epigenetics in a way, Wombat Hole, maybe? Yeah. And there you go, Rahab. Yeah. That is definitely a thing. And E to the 2i Pi, thank you for the raid. Welcome to Paleontologizing. It is wonderful to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Phenomenal. I really appreciate that, E. How was your stream? I hope it was excellent. Welcome to Paleontologizing. We're having a special Saturday morning stream today and raising money for an important charity, QueerCare. It's a nonprofit that was founded by trans activists. The organization is currently led by unpaid transgender volunteers and offers no strings attached financial support, as well as free in-person post-op care to LGBTQ plus folks undergoing surgeries. We're part of a raid train of a dozen different channels, each doing their thing and raising money for this organization. This is a competition to see who can raise the most money, and we are currently in first place. Super proud of that. Yeah, and we're talking all about different places in nature where biological sex is not like a staid and stolid, cut and dry binary. Nature is often far more complex and interesting and nuanced than that. It's an old saying by J.B.S. Haldane, who's an evolutionary biologist.
The infant?
Oh, hang on a sec.
The adult.
Cast Me All Black, thank you for the 23 months of support.
Ontogeny.
I appreciate that.
Yay, 23 months and DJ Desk 1. Hello, Quack.
Hello, Cast Me All Black. Thanks for keeping me online for the past 23 months. Really appreciate that. Galara Dragon, thank you so much for the 48 months. Holy cow. Spectacular. JBS Haldane probably didn't mean the word queer in the sense that we're talking about here. He meant it as, like, unexpected, interesting, strange. But he said the universe is not only queerer than we suppose, but queerer than we can suppose. Love this phrase. We're using it in kind of a cheeky way today to talk about how queer nature can be, too. Charlie's Dragon, thank you for the $50 right there for QueerCare. Spectacular. Really appreciate that. Phenomenal. Yeah. Mean Machine Rex says, were there queer dinosaurs? There certainly are today, and when we raid into Taffle in just a little bit, they'll be talking all about this. Birds are living dinosaurs. And so, modern birds can provide some clues as to how extinct dinosaurs may have behaved, may have lived. So we'll get into that in a bit, but... Here. Let's take a look at this real quick. We have examples of this. There we go. In modern dinosaurs.
We've always known how capable moms are, but maybe not to this degree. Scientists stunned to learn 2 condors asexually reproduce, and many believe it could likely happen again.
You may
Pretty
recognize
neat.
its nearly 10-foot wingspan.
Look at that. Look at that.
Condors. Condors are on the verge of extinction.
Or perhaps heard its name when the species was nearly wiped off the planet in the 80s. But today, California condors are soaring into the spotlight for a new reason. Meet Anyapa, geneticist working at the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, said she reproduced without a male partner.
Yep.
That means her offspring here only contains Anyapa's genes. Never further.
So, really interesting. This is a female who reproduced in the absence of males. No male partner here. She didn't get sperm from anywhere. She effectively cloned herself. Kind of like in Jurassic Park, maybe. this goes to show that, I don't know, anytime that somebody wants to tell you, well, you know, in nature you have to have a male and a female to reproduce. It's just how nature works. That's not always true, as we could see here. Parthenogenesis is what this is called.
Fertilized by sperm, the rare phenomenon scientifically known as parthenogenesis.
Yep.
Was this a eureka moment?
I was gobsmacked. I was blown away.
Dr. Oliver Ryder is among the researchers publishing the groundbreaking study this fall.
You understand something. Condors are still surprising us.
They started genetic
That's so
testing
cool.
here to make sure there was no inbreeding among the birds. But that process hatching a golden egg of sorts. Well, actually, two.
While reviewing the DNA profiles of more than 900 birds in this lab, geneticists accidentally discovered 2 condors asexually reproduced in the early 2000s. Their chicks, both males, dying at 2 and 8 years old, young compared to most condors.
This park is huge. I mean, how many acres are we talking about?
We have 1,800 acres here.
Erin Massey is a condor expert, for years helping repopulate the scavenger, even if that means playing mother hen herself.
A major goal of conservation efforts here is to help prepare condors for the wild, which means limiting their time and exposure to humans. This group will remain under managed care, allowing us to gain such close access.
To say the prehistoric vulture made a comeback is an understatement. At one point in the 1980s, just over 20 California condors roamed the earth. Today, that number has climbed into the hundreds, but not yet out of being labeled critically endangered.
So these guys are scavengers. They only eat dead things. So they are encountering animals that have been shot with lead ammunition in the wild, and that is something that they are consuming, and it is toxic to them.
This is why lead bullets are, I think for the most part, illegal to use in hunting in California. Because if you end up, as a hunter, shooting a lead bullet into an animal, it wanders off and dies, you can't find it. It might be preyed upon by condors. They'll ingest those lead bullets, and then they die. So there's a reason why these laws exist.
Some wonder whether parthenogenesis is condors' response to the species' struggling population. But Dr. Ryder points out in both cases, the females were paired with males. They just opted not to mate with them.
Interesting.
Why would a species asexually reproduce?
Well, that's a deep evolutionary question, that it's more complex than we know. And
So spoken like a true scientist. It's like, that's a tough one. I don't have a simple answer for you right now. Again, this is how scientists often speak, you know? I don't know, and that's okay. We haven't figured that out yet, is a perfectly valid response. You don't have to make up an explanation or anything. Science is about following the evidence where it leads, and sometimes we're not there yet, you know?
And produces things that we couldn't have imagined.
Producing what they couldn't imagine, but hope will repeat itself.
Do you think it will happen again?
I do. The world out there is just grander and deeper than we take for granted.
Pretty neat.
While common, other species have asexually reproduced, such as turkeys, lizards, and sharks. Dr. Ryder says this rare form of reproduction probably happens more than we realize because it's extremely unusual to examine an entire species' DNA as they did with the condors.
So that's a really good point, is that the only reason that they figured this out, that's what happened with these condors, is that they were genetically testing each of these individuals that were being born. So each chick that's hatched, I think they do DNA tests on to figure out who exactly the parents are, and in this case they're like, the DNA I guess only matches with the female and not with the male that she was living with. So the point is, this is probably more common than we realize. We just don't usually do the tests on a whole population like this, you know? Pretty neat. So all of her offspring will be female, right? Not necessarily, Mean Machine Rex, no. That's the thing, is I think this has been documented in condors before, and all of the offspring were male. So are they clones? I think they are, effectively, yeah. But there's something to do with the sex determination of birds that allows even clones of females to still be male, I think. Not totally sure how that works. Maybe Taffel will be able to help elucidate that when we go right into them. Yeah, it's really neat stuff. So yeah. Anyway, to kind of wrap up here, let's get back to this video here.
All right, check it out. Inside this jar is, boom, this here is a clownfish. You may be familiar with one of these. They're those kind of orange and white tropical fish. I'm pretty sure that this one is a female because it's pretty large. But here's the thing. It wasn't always a female.
Yep.
The clownfish society is kind of split up into some very interesting hierarchies. The fish at the very top is the female clownfish, and all of the fish underneath are males. But here's
So this is the opposite, as it is in the California sheephead and the cabidae and those wrasse, like we were talking about. And these, there's mostly males swimming around, and the male, I don't know, the male that happens to be at the top of the hierarchy, like the dominant one in the group, becomes female.
Here's the thing. If you take, the female clownfish and remove it, it dies, it passes away, it leaves for whatever reason, the second clownfish, the most dominant male, the second one in the hierarchy, will transition and become the female at the top. It switches genders, and everyone else...
Not genders. Gender's a human thing. We can't really use the word gender for animals. For non-human animals, I should say. But we would say biological sex here. So its sex actually changes naturally.
Kind of moves up one ranking. This is interesting for a couple reasons. It means that, one, all clownfish are born male, and only some, the ones at the very tippy top of the social hierarchy, will transition and become female. But I think what's more interesting is, think about this within the context of Finding Nemo. At the very beginning of the movie, Nemo's mom gets absolutely wrecked by a barracuda and dies. But yes, she passes away. So theoretically speaking, if Finding Nemo follows the rules of clownfish society, then Nemo's dad should now be Nemo's mom.
Yep.
Today we're talking about...
So it's funny, when you get a lot of movies like this, whether it's Finding Nemo or whether it's something like The Bee Movie with Jerry Seinfeld, we're anthropomorphizing these animals. We're making them strange in that they become human-like. But we're kind of ignoring how interesting they are from a biological standpoint. In The Bee Movie, all of the workers are male for some reason. They're actually female in real life. I guess that wouldn't have made for the kind of story that like Jerry Seinfeld wanted to tell here. But his character should have been female in that. Nemo's dad should have become female as well. Yeah, it's interesting how much more complex nature is than we often like to admit,
Animals that switch genders over the course of their life. The scientific term for this is sequential hermaphrodites. Hermaphrodite is a term that, I don't know, is kind of sketchy to use in just regular conversations, but we still use it in science. So sequential hermaphrodites are animals that...
It's a technical term in biology.
When we talk about genders, we're talking about whether they contribute an egg or a sperm to reproduction. So females contribute an egg, and then males contribute a sperm.
Generally speaking, there's also exceptions to this too. But
so these are animals that can switch.
Oh, an interesting, Raycon.
The clownfish, we had an example of an animal that
give you a
switches
link to this video
from
here.
Males to females. But let's pull out one that switches from females to males. Okay, I got it right here. Big boy.
Is this the
We'll
Asian sheephead wrasse?
Semicocyphus reticulatus. This is an Asian sheep's head wrasse. This is kind of like the opposite.
So this might be different from the cabidae, or it might be the same species. I'm not totally sure, but this is pretty common in wrasses. We already talked about these guys. There's also the blue head wrasse. He's talking about right here. And then we got these guys.
because I think it's the most interesting. Hypoplectrus unicolor. This is a yellow hamlet, which is, again, a type of fish. This one looks so nice. Check out this bad boy. Excellent. So yellow hamlets aren't sequential hermaphrodites. Instead, they're synchronous hermaphrodites, meaning they always kind of possess the ability to contribute an egg or a sperm to reproduction. They're
So they've
male
got
and female.
They're male and female at the same
There's
time.
a particular
Yeah.
hamlet, I think it's called the black hamlet, that engages in a very interesting mating routine. Let me set this scene for you. Okay, it's at night. Two black hamlets meet, and they decide to get romantic with each other. They meet under the cover of darkness as the sun is setting. One hamlet will assume the role of a female and do this little mating kind of fold over the other hamlet. The other hamlet will assume the role of male and contribute sperm, to be totally frank. They'll mate and they'll have a dandy old time, and then they'll depart. But we're not done, because the very next night, as the sun sets again, our two fish lovers will meet once more. Except this time, they'll switch gender roles. The one who is a female now will become a male, and the one who was a male now will assume the role of a female, at least in that mating fish folding ritual. This process is called egg swapping. They kind of switch off. I just like the fact that they do it over the course of a couple nights. They go on a couple fish dates. The black hamlets do it over the course of a few nights, but there are other hamlets, like this yellow one that I just pulled out, that can do it over the course of the same night, like 20 different times. It's like,
So really, really interesting. The point is, I hope we've made this point effectively. I'll give you a link to this video because this is really, really cool, looking at all these different rayfin fish here. There's a link for you there in the chat. Astrofox, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. And Charlie's Dragon, thank you. Did I say thank you yet for that $50 donation? Really appreciate that, Charlie's Dragon. What does that bring our total to? Holy cow. We'll see. But this has been phenomenal. I hope I've really underlined the point that in nature, sex is not like a neat and tidy binary thing. And if anybody tries to tell you otherwise, I hope you now realize that they don't know what they're talking about. Nature is complex and interesting, and there's so many different gray areas in it. We as human beings like to put it into neat little tidy boxes to make it either easier to understand for us, easier to relate to, or maybe, I don't know, I'm convinced that a lot of people are honestly offended and terrified of the beautiful complexity that exists in nature. And the same way that a lot of folks back in the day were kind of terrified of the idea of evolution, of the mutability of species. People didn't like the idea that species are not fixed. That over time, living things changed. They adapt to their environments. They evolve. Species change over time. Back in Victorian times, when old Chucky D, Charles Darwin, first brought this to the attention of the world, when he demonstrated not only that species change over time, but he had a mechanism for it, natural selection, that helped explain that. A lot of people really didn't like that idea because it didn't conform to their narrow view of how things are supposed to be. But nature doesn't care about what you think it should do. It's far more messy and complex and interesting than that. When we try and impose human constraints upon nature, it doesn't really work. Whether we're talking about the fixity of species, oh, well, this creature will always be the same because things don't change over time. No, they do. The same is true for biological sex. There's a lot of different creatures that don't like to play by the rules that human beings try and impose on them. And this is also true for human beings. there are folks that you, I'm sure, know personally. Whether you realize it or not, there are folks in your community who might not conform to the narrow gender roles that some of the people in power try and impose upon them. Human beings are a part of nature. And there is far more complexity and beauty within the human race than I think a lot of people would like to admit. Some people are scared of this. Don't let those people ever tell you that, oh, well, that's unnatural. This doesn't happen in nature. If they're saying that, they don't understand nature. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, super proud to have been able to do this today. I'm incredibly proud of this community for raising, what is our final total here? $1,600 for QueerCare today. I am overjoyed. Incredibly proud of this community here. I don't know how to say thank you enough. With that being said, it is now 12:05. And Taffle is currently streaming. We're going to go ahead and raid into Taffle. We will continue our QueerCare raid train fundraiser here. There's Taffle right there. Right here. After that, it's going to be Zupador, Helena Handbasket, Zombie Giant Sponge, and then Ios. So we are officially more than halfway through. Let's go ahead and raid Taffle. Excellent. And with that, we will begin our wrap-up here. Let's put an Archaeopteryx under our credits. Thank you to everybody who donated today. Incredibly proud of what we've been able to do. It looks like we won. It looks like... Well, so far. We'll see if anybody surpasses us. If we do, I'll be really happy, because the highest total from any one stream is going to be matched by an anonymous donor. So $1,600? No, $3,200 we may have just raised for QueerCare. That is incredible. I'm incredibly proud. Thank you to everybody appearing on our credits too. Subscribers, resubscribers, followers, cheerers. Appreciate all of you. Moderators, thank you for showing up on a Saturday, on the weekend, to help keep this a safe and welcoming community for everybody. I appreciate you more than you know. Thank you, mods. And thank you, Galara Dragon, for that extra $5. Beautiful. Right under the wire. Let's go right into Taffle. We'll keep this fundraiser train going, and I'll see you there. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.